Retreat, by its very definition, is an opportunity for me as a pastor to go away, to be in God's presence alone, to give God my full and undivided attention for an extended period of time. And Jesus indicates that it's possible to gain the whole world and to lose your own soul. I think if Jesus were talking to us as Christian ministry leaders today, he might even tell us that it's possible to gain the whole world of ministry success and lose your own soul. And from the way I look at it, I think a retreat is an opportunity for us to go away, to be in God's presence, and to allow Him to touch our souls, to replenish our souls, to reclaim our souls if we need to, but that's something only God can do. And on a retreat, we have the opportunity to give God full access to our souls so that we can be strengthened at that level for what He's called us to do. It is true that the language of retreat has been compromised both in secular settings and also in Christian settings. Oftentimes when we go on retreat these days, it's a time that's full of programming, it's full of teaching and content. You might have multiple people in a room together so that you don't get any time alone at all, and you go home from retreat exhausted. In the language of spirituality and spiritual practices, a retreat is a time that's set apart. And on retreat, we get to engage in a different way of being, a different rhythm of spiritual practices. And so on retreat, in the evening at a national pastor's retreat, we'll gather, we'll get oriented a little bit, we'll be invited to retreat, and then we'll go into the great silence after a meal, and we will have quiet and rest that night, and we'll have time to be in God's presence right off the bat. We will experience rhythms of prayers. We'll start in the evening that first night. We'll experience night prayer together. Then the next morning, we'll start our day with morning prayer. We'll have more teaching and input, but then the emphasis of the retreat will be for us to have some extended time in solitude that afternoon. So you'll have 4 hours of solitude, 4 hours to be in God's presence and to speak to God the way you need to speak to Him, to do the things that you and God would enjoy doing together, to rest yourself in God's presence. It's really the highlight of the retreat, is the afternoon spent in complete solitude and silence. And then we'll come back together as a group, we'll pray evening prayers together, we'll share a meal again and have some conversation that night. And so there's just a wonderful replenishing rhythm of teaching and silence, of prayer, of solitude and community with other leaders. And so it's a fully orbed experience, but one that's meant to be deeply replenishing and to help you to touch the truest part of yourself, which is your soul. Well, I think pastors in particular can end up with a very confused situation where their spiritual life is all mixed up with their vocational life and their work, and even their family life can be all mixed up in it as well. And sometimes we can get confused about our spirituality as being a separate issue, as something that we need to attend to, that we need to pull away from life in the limelight. It's not about preaching a sermon at a retreat. It's not about leading or guiding anyone else. It's about an opportunity for us to give ourselves over to spiritual guidance and to give ourselves over to just being a soul in God's presence. And many pastors think they're too busy. I would say that if you think you're too busy, it's probably time for you to go on retreat, because it means you're completely consumed with your work, you're completely consumed with your ministry, to the extent that when Jesus invites you to come away with me and rest a while, Jesus says that to His own disciples in the New Testament, come away with me and rest a while. If we hear that invitation from Jesus and we say to Him, no, I'm too busy, then we are in desperate need of a retreat. We're in desperate need of finding ourselves in God's presence again and seeing our ministry life as being really secondary to our own intimacy with God, and then our ministry can flow out of the relationship that we're cultivating with God Himself. The National Pastors Retreats are coming to the Midwest. We will be in Adrian, Michigan on September 28th through 30th, and the topic there will be strengthening the soul of your leadership. And then in November 2 through 4, we'll be in Chicago. And again, the topic will be strengthening the soul of your leadership. And we will hit some of the most significant elements of what it means for a pastor or a ministry leader to strengthen the soul of their leadership. We'll talk about learning how to rest in God. We'll talk about symptoms and sources of our depletion in ministry. We'll talk about solitude as a key discipline for Christian leaders. We'll talk about the unique challenges of spiritual leadership in the church today. We'll talk about the transforming leader and how we can lead from our own transforming self. And then we'll conclude by talking about how we can establish rhythms of being in God's presence while we're in ministry and continue to seek God with all of our hearts in the crucible of what's going on in our own ministry lives. Well, when you go to the retreat center, first of all, you can expect it to be beautiful. Both of the retreat centers that we'll be at are beautiful places to rest your soul in God. You will enjoy it just for the sheer beauty. But there will be someone there to greet you. They will take you to your own private room. You'll have your own private room and bath so that during times of solitude, you'll be able to be quiet and alone in God's presence. There will be a beautiful chapel space that hopefully will just draw your soul out in worship and intimacy with God. You can expect good food, and you can definitely expect good fellowship with people who are ministering in the same kinds of arenas that you are. We start at around 5 or 6 on Sunday evening. You'll have to go to the website to find out the specific time for your retreat. But that's purposeful because we want you to be able to take care of whatever you need to take care of in your church. Preach on Sunday, whatever you need to do, and then, pick up your little bag and head out the door and head off to retreat. And then we will end by noon on Tuesday, so you can be back in your own setting by Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening. Well, this is very exciting for us because we've been doing National Pastors Retreats for several years, and for the first time we're going to add a new topic. In San Diego, the retreat takes place before the National Pastors Convention, and many of you are already planning to attend the convention, and so this is an additional invitation for you with one set of travel arrangements to come out to San Diego a few days early, to come on Monday, and to join us for the National Pastors Retreat before you engage the convention. And we're introducing a new topic, and the topic is discernment, the heart of spiritual leadership. Interestingly enough, even though discernment is about responding and recognizing the voice of God in your everyday life, many pastors didn't have much training on that in seminary. We didn't learn, how do I recognize the voice of God, and how do I respond to the voice of God in the context of leadership, and how can that be the heart of my leadership? And I believe that it is. I believe the ability to listen to God and to respond to God's leading is at the heart of what it means to be a spiritual leader. And so on this retreat, for the first time, we'll be talking about personal discernment, and then we'll also be talking about community discernment. How can I establish the pattern of discernment as a part of my leadership, both alone and with others? So we're very excited to offer this for the first time. And for those of you who have never come, you will enjoy this retreat on its own. But if you've already been to one of our retreats, it's a chance to come again to a set of rhythms that you've enjoyed and appreciated, but this time to hear some new content. So we pray that we'll see some of you that we've already seen before in San Diego.